Here we go. This is not your typical Frequent Miler on the Air episode.
This is a standalone segment we're calling Coffee Break.
Each coffee break segment will cover a single topic related to miles and points.
And each coffee break is limited to 20 minutes or your money back. Enjoy. Today's coffee break, don't take a siesta on Sonesta. Sonesta is a hotel chain that we have not paid a lot of attention to in the past, but that's about to change because there's some interesting stuff going on.
There is. And so we'll talk all about it. Tim wrote a great post this week. And of course, as always, we have the timestamps in the show notes and pertinent links in the show notes. And so if we talk about this and you say, wow, this is interesting, you should totally check out Tim's complete guide to Sonesta Travel Pass because it has all the details in it, even more than what we'll probably get to in the next 20 minutes. So you'll want to make sure you check that out wherever you're watching or listening. Don't forget to like this show, subscribe to our channel, enable notifications, tell your friends and family. But let's get into Sonesta Travel Pass because this is interesting. I find it most interesting, not even necessarily because I'm in a hurry to stay at Sonesta's, but because it's a program that has really come out of nowhere and that I feel like not many people in this space are talking about, yet maybe we should be. So Sonesta now has, believe it or not, and this blew my mind, more than 1,100 properties. I mean, that's way more than what I would have guessed if you asked me to guess how many there are. Now, their properties, of course, skew towards the value end of things. Brands like Red Lion and America's Best Value Inn and things like that. So that's, I think, the heavier part of their footprint. But they do have some premium brands and some luxury and lifestyle brands. So these are things like Sonesta ES, Sonesta Simply Suites, Essential Select, Royal Sonesta, the James Hotels. So there are quite a few different brands there that may appeal to premium and luxury travelers as well. They don't have award charts, but that's not necessarily as bad as it sounds because they do have set award levels. So it's not like price could be anything under the sun. There's set levels between 10 and 50,000 points per night. And the award costs are pretty reasonable. Tim found that the reasonable redemption value of Sonesta points was just over 1 cent per point. So that puts them among the most valuable hotel points out there. I mean, obviously not quite as valuable as Hyatt, but more valuable than most of the other hotel brand points. So that's kind of interesting. And also interesting is that in some cases, similar to Choice Privileges, if you know that program, in some cases you can book multiple different room types for the same standard award price. So in some cases, you could book either a standard room or perhaps even a suite for the same number of points. So that's appealing for people who like booking suites. And as a family traveler, I really value that. So that caught my interest. And finally, last thing, and we'll talk more about all of this stuff, is that you can get elite status through credit card spend alone. So that also might make this appealing if you find that elite status benefits are well honored, which is an if, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes.
Yeah.
So
one of the cool things here is that when you have smaller hotel chains, and they're not tiny by any means now with 1,100 properties, but they're definitely less well known than your Marriott and Hilton and so on. When you have these smaller ones and they want to compete in the loyalty space, they need to be more generous in order to attract us, and so there's some attractive things here, and I think a lot of that is because they want to compete and they want to draw eyeballs away from the big guys, and that's what's happening right now.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's why, a program like Starwood Preferred Guest was so popular for so many years because they were much smaller. And so they did have to work harder to keep people loyal. And as a result, they had a great loyalty program. I don't know if Sonesta is going to become the next SPG, but at least there are some things here that you may find appealing. So in terms of elite status, they have 4 different levels. Bronze is no status at all. And then they have silver, gold, and platinum. The free breakfast status, which we'll put in quotation marks, I'll use air quotes on that for those in the video. Free breakfast status is gold or platinum. Either of those come with complimentary continental breakfast with a little bit of an asterisk, and that is that it's not clear that you'll get it everywhere. It basically says you get it based on availability or like some brands based on brand, but it doesn't tell you which brands get it and which brands don't. So it's kind of hard to know where you'll get free breakfast, but at least somewhere out there you'll get free breakfast with gold or platinum.
Yeah.
Gold requires 20 nights or 20,000 points. Platinum requires 40 nights or 40,000 points. Those numbers seem relatively normal and reasonable and more or less what you'd expect for elite status with other competing programs. But they're a little bit more interesting than they sound. We'll get into that because points can be earned from either spend in hotels or from credit card spend. And so that's why the number of points may be more interesting to you even than the number of nights required. But the downside, so to speak, is that all meaningful elite benefits are really poorly defined. So, like, there are things like room upgrades and late checkout and free breakfast, but it's all really murky as to where you're going to get those things or when. There's no sort of guarantees, and things aren't really spelled out very clearly. So, I think it's going to be very much property dependent as to how well elite benefits are recognized. And like Greg said, maybe they'll be really well recognized because it's a small chain and they have made a number of changes. So maybe one of those is telling their properties to play along and be nice to elites, but we don't know that. So it's really hard to know what you're going to get.
Right, right. One poorly defined benefit I'm curious about is I think it's called something like preferred parking that you get at higher elite levels, and it's unclear. Does that mean parking's included, or just you get to park closer to the hotel, or what does that mean?
There's a bunch of Hilton properties I've stayed at over the years. Like, I mean, even like Hampton Inn type properties that have diamond member parking. Have you ever seen that? The sign that's
Yes.
like for Hilton diamond members. And I'm like, okay, all
So
right, I'll
your
take the
car gets an
parking spot.
upgrade, but you don't. Yeah.
Right, 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 exactly. Always kind of fun, but an odd benefit. Anyway, so yeah, that's exactly it. Who knows what these things really mean until we start staying at these places, and most of us haven't stayed at many Sonesta properties yet. At least when I say most of us, I mean most of us that are blogging about these things haven't, because I haven't seen many other blogs cover this, and most of us on this team haven't stayed at many or any Sonestas. So we don't have a ton of experience with the program yet, but we do have some readers who have experience and have shared it with us. So we do have a couple of tips coming up in a second here. First of which is under the shortcuts to elite status. So if you get the credit card, the Sonesta credit card, which we'll talk more about in a few minutes, then you automatically get gold status. So free breakfast status just for having the credit card. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, I mean, as long as the breakfast is actually included in the places you stay, that's great.
Yeah. And so if you have a way of verifying in advance, you can call the property before you stay, which is probably what I would do, is call and see what the benefits are. So if you are able to find out in advance that you're going to save a bunch of money on breakfast, it might be worth getting the credit card just for breakfast, at a particularly nice resort or something
Right.
where breakfast
And
would be expensive.
and we're not talking about like a Bonvoy Brilliant or Hilton Aspire really expensive card to get free breakfast, right? We're talking
Right.
about how much is a Sonesta card? I forget.
It's $75 annual fee and it's waived the
Yeah.
first year, so it's pretty
Yeah.
inexpensive.
Yep.
Breakfast would pay for itself pretty quickly there, or the card would pay for itself through free breakfast, I guess, pretty quickly if you would like to have breakfast in your hotel. So that's nice. You get gold status just for that, but you can get top tier platinum status really easily also, because platinum status requires, remember we said 40 nights or 40,000 points. Now, the credit card has a benefit where if you spend $7,500 in a card member year, you get a bonus 30,000 points. So if you were to spend $7,500 on the credit card, you would get an extra 30,000 points. And those 30,000 points apparently do count towards the qualifying points for elite status. We've had readers share that. That's incredible.
So yeah, that's
Because
incredible because even if you're just earning 1x to also on the spend, that means you're only what 2,500 points away from platinum status by the time you've spent your 7,500 points.
that's right. That's right.
I
And
mean,
there are a couple
spent
of
$7,500.
$7,500. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so that $7,500 spend is getting the equivalent of 5x, between the 1x on the card and 4x essentially for that bonus. So you're getting
yeah,
a decent return on that $7,500 spend in terms of Sonesta points. And yeah, you're awfully close to platinum status. Now, the card does have a couple of 2x categories. So if you were to spend 2,500 of your 7,500 in one of those 2x categories, then you could knock
you're
out
done.
platinum status just with that spend. So pretty easy to end up there. And apparently you can do even better because if you're familiar with Bank of America, which issues this card, they run a promotion once or twice a year or something, maybe more than that, every now and then, where they'll double points. They'll offer you double rewards for like a day. It'd be a double rewards day. And much to my surprise, we had a reader report that doing the $7,500 spend on that double rewards day also doubled the 30,000 points. So
That's
they ended up with
unbelievable.
60K for 7,500 spend. That's incredible.
And presumably the 7,500 spend itself then earned 2x. So So
Yeah,
presumably,
presumably, yes.
presumably she got 15,000 from the spend and then 60,000 from that annual bonus. So yeah, that seems. Now I wouldn't go into it expecting that always
Right,
happens. Like
right,
take that as like a hope that it happens.
right.
But
Good point.
because at the very least you should be able to count on getting 2x from the spend, so it's worth doing during those double days if you're going to do it anyway.
Yeah,
But
because I
if
mean,
you
if you
gotta
only get the 30x or the 30,000 points, right? But you get 2x on your 7,500 spend,
right.
then you're talking about 45,000 points. Boom, one day you knock out platinum status.
Right, right. And that's like 2 nights too in a pretty nice Sonesta.
Right. And that's a repeatable bonus. We're not talking, that's not the welcome bonus on the credit card. This is just, that's an annual benefit that we're
Right.
talking about there. We'll talk about the credit card welcome bonus in a couple of minutes here. But so that's awesome because that's repeatable every single year. That's a nice return on spend. If you like Sonesta points, obviously it depends on how you're going to use the points. But that's going to vary from person to person. We talked recently on the podcast, on the Frequent Miler on the Air podcast, about the fact that quite a few Kimpton properties have rebranded as Sonestas, and they got some, I think, some Intercontinentals, and there's some Marriotts that became Sonestas. So
Mhm.
they took over a number of other properties. Places that you might already be familiar with. And we talked about some of those on our most recent podcast episode. That was, I think, maybe number 260, episode 260, I believe. So you can check that out if you look at our full podcast feed. In terms of points on paid stays, just quickly to run down that, if you have bronze status, you earn either 5 or 10 points per dollar, depending on which brand you stay at. It varies a little bit and it's not intuitive. I would have thought you earned fewer points on all of the cheaper brands and more points on all the more expensive brands, but it was actually kind of mixed when I looked at the brands. So,
Huh.
so you'll have to check out the post for the full details. So bronze, either 5 or 10, silver, either 7.5 or 15x per dollar spent, gold, 8.75 or 17.5 points per dollar spent, and platinum, 10 or 20 points per dollar spent. Again, that's on Sonesta spend at hotels. That's based on your elite status, nothing to do with the credit card. So you could also earn status just by spending money at the right properties. Like, if you spent $2,000 at a property that offers 20 points per dollar, then you can get your 40,000 points on one hotel stay, perhaps. Though note that you can only earn a maximum of 100,000 points from a single stay. So
Huh.
that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
If you were a platinum member and you spent $5,000 at a property that offers 20x, then that's it. That's a cap. Don't spend any more money because you're not going to earn any more
Right.
Sonesta points on that stay. It's kind of
That
weird.
is really weird that they would want to discourage people from doing very expensive stays.
Yeah, it's weird. And you can earn points on up to 3 rooms. So, if you were treating family members to a stay like in Hawaii, there's Sonesta has some
Yeah.
properties there. I could see where you could very easily spend over $5,000 on 2 or 3 rooms and you would only earn up to 100,000 points. That seems kind of crazy, but it's worth knowing anyway if you're in that kind of a boat. We do hear from readers now and then that treat family members to trips to Hawaii, and you'll want to know that you're only going to earn up to 100K on that stay.
Right.
But we should talk about the credit card before we wrap this up because the Sonesta Travel Pass credit card is interesting in the sense that we talked about the 30K bonus that comes every year by spending 7,500 points, or rather $7,500. But we should talk a little bit about the card and the current welcome bonus. And we'll have a link again in the show notes. But at the time of recording, this is an increased offer. We have an increased elevated offer on the Sonesta Travel Pass MasterCard from Bank of America. Right now, when we record this, you can earn 120,000 points after just $2,000 spend in 90 days and another 5,000 points by adding an authorized user within that 90 days. And there's no the way the annual fee is waived the first year and then it's $75 after that each year. So I mean 125,000 points essentially after you spend 2K and you add an authorized user. That's a pretty amazing return when you consider the reasonable redemption value of a little over 1 cent per point. So you're talking about $1,250 worth of points on just $2,000 spend. That's a pretty incredible bonus. That's a great return on
It
spend.
really is. And keep in mind that the reasonable redemption value is based on the median rate that Tim observed across a whole lot of stays. And so there's a good chance of getting significantly better than that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, Tim made the assumption because he couldn't find documentation one way or another. He made the assumption that you do have to pay resort fees when you are doing these stays on points. But the same person who wrote in about the 30,000 points doubling said that she hasn't been charged resort fees on her stays. So that actually increases the value of points if that's true. And again, we haven't verified that yet.
Yeah, but so the 1 cent per point is, like we said, a median value. So about half the time you're going to do better than that without even
Yeah.
trying. So if you if you look around for the cherry picked stays, and if you get those resort fees waived, you may be doing significantly better. I mean, that's just a fantastic return on only $2,000 spend. The card itself, I mean, it earns 3x at Sonesta, and it earns 2x on airfare, car rental, and dining. Again, eh.
Okay.
But, maybe one of those is worth it if you're spending towards the annual $7,500 bonus, because it does come with 30,000 points each year when you spend $7,500 in a card member year. So you get that bonus if you spend 7,500 bucks in your card member year, which is probably worth it, especially in year one. If you're going to spend 2K to earn the initial welcome bonus, you may as well go for the other 5,500 in order to earn an additional 30,000 points and end up with 155,000 total points. That's pretty awesome.
Yes, it sure is.
Yep. All right. So are you excited about it? What do you think? I mean, what do you think about Sonesta Travel Pass? Is this a program you're going to dig into? Are you going to start staying at Sonesta's, Greg? I mean, you're going to get out there for the sake of science and tell us whether this is all worth it?
Yeah, I am. I need to do this. At the very least, my wife needs to sign up for it. She's not as close to going over 524 as I am, so I'm hesitant to sign up for it myself because I don't want to lock myself out of upcoming chase bonuses. But with this card, I mean, the value proposition is so strong, and the cost to get in is so low that as long as you have a reasonable use for it, it feels to me like a great opportunity. So I could see us, just as an example, I don't know that this will happen, but I could see us getting the card, trying it out at one of those former Kimptons in Chicago, so we could see what it's like using the points and the elite status that comes with the card, and then maybe try the property in Hawaii if it's available, and see what it's like for a resort stay.
Yeah, yeah. I think maybe there's even a couple of properties in Hawaii, but you were probably talking about what was the Marriott, the Kauai
Right.
Marriott, I think,
Yeah.
right? That's now a Royal Sonesta. So yeah, I find this intriguing in the same kind of way that the Club Carlson card was intriguing years ago. Like the Club Carlson card, and this is like going way back before Radisson
Yeah.
and before Radisson became part of Choice. It was a card that wasn't like, I mean, I don't think a lot of people were wildly excited about Radisson, but way back when it used to come with like a buy one get one free hotel night. So it was like there was no harm in getting it. Basically, it was like a decent return on spend. It was a decent number of points per dollar spent and everything, and it came with a benefit that if you could leverage it each year, it might be worthwhile. It wasn't going to be your daily driver and probably your primary hotel card, but it was a really interesting complementary piece. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's what this is. Even though it's a totally different card, it fits into that category for me. So I don't think
Totally.
I'm going to
Yeah.
get it right away, but man, I could see getting it. And especially with this bonus, I think with the bonus that's up right now, I'm intrigued. It's
Right.
certainly
Right.
on my mind.
Yeah. I agree with you totally. Like I think their footprint is too geographically limited to make it your like only hotel strategy. That would be crazy at this point. Because I mean, to my knowledge, I don't think they have stuff like that in Europe or
I
Asia.
don't
I mean,
think so,
I
but
just
I don't
don't
know.
know.
Yeah.
But to the extent that you're traveling where they do have hotels, it looks like they have a nice mix of hotels, and um, it could be a great secondary play here, and that's how I would think of it in my family. What about you? Are you
Yeah.
going to sign up? Are you going to apply?
Not yet, but it's certainly something that's on my mind. And Sonesta was not at all on my mind like a few weeks ago. So that says something. I feel like that right there is enough for me to say, well, I should give it a little bit more consideration because they never would have been on my mind. Now they are. Also for the ability to maybe status match it to something else down the road could be useful. So not going to be my, like you said, not going to be my primary hotel play, but I'm intrigued. Congratulations on that, Sonesta. If you enjoyed this episode, you want to make sure that you join our email list at frequentmiler.com/subscribe. Check out our full-length Frequent Miler on the Air episodes dropping every Friday, and we will see you guys again soon.
Bye, everybody.